Now, most of you who watch my videos are probably huge fans of Star Wars, and if you have been watching my channel for quite some time now, you also know I'm somewhat of a Trekkie. I spent my late teens playing Knights of the Old Republic, watching Star Wars Rebels. But I also dived into the Kevin timeline movies countless times, and also read some of the comics and crossovers. And now, Star Trek The Next Generation is my go-to Netflix show when I have the time. My friend also used to joke that, based on the laws of physics, a person cannot be both a fan of Star Wars and a Trekkie at the same time. But today is April 5th, First Contact Day. A special day for many Star Trek fans, just as May the 4th is a special day to Star Wars fans. So I'll be talking a bit about what I love about Star Trek that I feel many Star Wars fans miss out on. Recently I was scrolling through the comment section of a Star Trek video, and someone in the comment section basically said something along the lines that Star Wars brings awe and spectacle, while Star Trek brings hope and inspiration. From its conception in the early 1960s during the Cold War, Star Trek has always had the idea at its core, what humanity could be in the future. A captain from Iowa, a half-alien first officer, an African female communications officer, a Scottish chief engineer, with a Japanese and Russian working together at the helm. And don't forget the good old doctor in the medical bay. People of all backgrounds, ethnicities, cultures working toward the common goal of propelling humanity ever forward into the unknown. There's a reason why Star Trek is set in our future, while Star Wars is set in a galaxy far, far away. These two different settings set the precedence to how we would relate to them. One is to set an example for which we should strive for to be, while another is a fantasy world whose main focus is still nonetheless centered around one family's impact on an entire galaxy. I'm not saying that Star Wars doesn't explore similar themes. The whole idea of the Rebel Alliance was also built on the idea of the hope for democracy in the galaxy. But the difference in where and when they take place means that Trek offers a really different experience from Star Wars. It inspires me in a different way as compared to, say, characters like Luke Skywalker and Kreia. Those two are some of the best characters in Star Wars, but there are just some things that you learn from Spock or Captain Archer a little more differently as compared to these two characters. Despite being a Trekkie, one thing I find quite funny about the original series or The Next Generation, or in fact any of those TV shows, are sometimes the fighting scenes between characters. The movements seem a bit awkward sometimes. Granted, these shows are filmed decades ago and they do not have the appeal of modern action sequences we have in, say, the Old Republic cinematics or the Clone Wars. But if you think about it, the original trilogy also faced similar issues. Notably the duel between Old Man Kenobi and Darth Vader. But I think that also enables us to just slow down and enjoy the plot of the show itself. Trek has always been a TV series. Many episodes with plenty of character dynamics and personalities to explore. Star Wars was originally for the big screen and never really had such a luxury. Not to say that the characters were shallow, but there's only so much you can convey in 3 movies as compared to 7 seasons of TV. Much of what people love about Anakin Skywalker and many of the prequel era Jedi actually comes a lot from the 2008 Clone Wars TV series. And without it, many would have actually disliked or even outright hated Hayden Christensen's portrayal of the young Jedi Knight. At its core, while Star Wars does provide some deep philosophical discussions in some avenues, I feel like these are sometimes muddy or buried underneath all the action and duels that people don't really focus on those so much, except for the more hardcore fans. But for a casual viewer of Star Trek, I believe that the ideas and discussions are more easy to surface, simply because of how it is packaged and delivered. After all, it's in the names of the franchises. One is meant to trek across the stars, while the other is to have warfare amongst the stars. As much as there is a common depiction of Trek as being this utopian society where the grass is greener and where humanity leads a federation of planets into the future evermore, and Star Wars has all the doom and gloom, explosions and death across the galaxy, Trek doesn't actually shy away from showing the darker and less glorious side of humanity. Deep Space Nine is where Sisko has to learn to cut corners and be as ruthless as he is in the deadness of space, where he doesn't have access to Federation resources. and humanity was never always part of a larger united federation of planets. It took years of development, of walking about in the dark and stumbling, and a war which brought humanity to where we see it in the original series and later the next generation. That was one of the things I actually appreciated the most about Star Trek Enterprise. In my opinion, one of the most underrated Star Trek series. Enterprise was meant to bridge the gap between us and Star Trek. It was never without difficulty, and it was never with a snap of fingers that these things came into being. Captain Archer was the pioneering space explorer, commanding the first ever deep space mission of humanity, where there was no guidebook, no prime directive, and humanity doesn't have the connections or established relations with many aliens in our galaxy. One may compare the Enterprise NX-01 era of Star Trek to the equivalent of, say, the High Republic or the Old Republic era of Star Wars. But while it is one of the things I do enjoy about Star Wars, the Old Republic era is just meant to expand the history of Star Trek, and it's a romanticization of the good old days. Enterprise, for all its shortcomings, was one of those things that actually show us, humans, our limits, but also how we can strive to overcome them, which I say is actually kind of lacking in the Star Wars department. Name one figure that both Star Wars and Star Trek fans can unite against, and that is J.J. Abrams, the man who directed modern Trek movies and is also partly responsible for the sequel trilogy. Star Trek purists will kill me out there, but J.J. Abrams' Trek was phenomenal. The casting choices were excellent. My favourite of the two were Zachary Quinto as Spock and Karl Urban as Dr. McCoy. And these movies were what got me into Star Trek in the first place. It has its issues and flaws, and there are valid criticisms to it, but it wasn't so divisive and controversial as compared to the sequel trilogy. Both Star Trek 2009 and The Force Awakens were new attempts trying to breathe life into the seemingly dying franchises, and both introduced new casts and characters. Into Darkness was the weakest of Abrams' Trek, but it paid homage to Wrath of Khan and the dynamic between Kirk and Spock, while The Last Jedi, though enjoyable, failed to really capture the character of Luke and missed out on the excellent opportunity to get the original cast back together. And finally, I've watched both Star Trek Beyond and The Rise of Skywalker in theaters. Beyond was a fun action movie which captured the adventure and exploration of Star Trek, while The Rise of Skywalker just blinded my eyes with all those lightning effects on Exegol. But enough sequel bashing, you get the point. Star Trek has a better modern trilogy compared to Star Wars. Even with all its flaws, I still think that J.J. Abrams did Star Trek a service as compared to what he did to Star Wars. Okay, since I just talked about quite a controversial topic, I figured I'll just say that, in my personal opinion, Trekkies are way more tame than Star Wars fans. While we are both disappointed by how our beloved franchises were handled, things such as Discovery, Picard, The Book of Boba Fett, and Kenobi that many people would like to bring up and criticize, I feel like Trekkies do appreciate the good things that still come out, like Strange New Worlds, while the Star Wars camp just sleeps on Andor and doesn't really bother about it so much. The drama and disagreements among Star Wars fans just blow up into proportions. Even a small difference in opinion, such as who is stronger, will often garner some hate comments or some really uncivilized conversations. But Trekkies, they just stick together, despite whatever difference they may have. And that's it for this video. If you're interested in more things related to Star Wars, the Old Republic, and sometimes even some Star Trek, do check out the rest of my channel. As always, may the Force be with you, and live long and prosper.